So, welcome everyone to the next episode of the Care CEO Success Stories podcast, where we showcase and celebrate UK's leading care CEOs and where they talk about and discuss their single best achievement or the achievement they are most proud of. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I have no less than Mike Parsons, the founder of Barchester Healthcare, perhaps arguably one of the most successful care entrepreneurs in the history of the UK. So this is a very, very exciting episode, and I'm very, very pleased he's joined me today. Now, as you know, Barchester Healthcare has around about 251 care homes across the UK and 7 registered hospitals. Employs 17,000 staff, and Mike founded Barchester Healthcare back in 1992, which was, he'll tell us all about this. He was actually finding it difficult to find a suitable care home for his aunts, and he'll tell us all about that. And that actually was the foundations for the idea of Barchester Healthcare, which he then grew considerably, and ultimately Mike was at the head for around about 21 years when he retired as CEO of Barchester Healthcare in 2013. So it's going to be a terrific episode, and we're all going to be looking forward to it immensely. Now, before we get going, just quickly, as I mentioned, or I may not have mentioned, my name's Adam James of Spring Up PR, and we help care providers, aspirational care providers, become famous, particularly via PR and raising the profile and reputation, ultimately to help get more inquiries and recruit great care teams. And if you head over to springup-pr.com, you will be able to find out lots of free tips and information on PR and marketing for care providers. So head over to there when you can. Now, without any further ado, I'm very, very pleased to say we have Mike Parsons as our guest. So welcome, Mike, and why don't you start by introducing yourself and saying who you are and what you do?
Well, I must be one of the oldest CEOs on your program list. Yeah, I started Barchester in 1992, and that was after having been in advertising for 20 years. I ended up as a managing director in an advertising agency. Then I had the human experience of my mother had 2 aunts, so they were in fact my great aunts, both of whom needed care. I did the thing you expect your son to do. So I drove my mother around looking at care homes in the early 90s. Back in those days, many of them were local authority owned, or they were owned by, just large companies that were out to make a buck and weren't really terribly concerned about good care. We found decent places for both of them, but along the way, it certainly left an idea in my head that there was a gap in the British market for a very good middle of the road. By that I mean, public, half private, but really working to a very high standard where your workforce were very proud to come into the home every day and where you looked after your workforce. And I think we did that. And I think across my 21 years as CEO, we created a company that had a very strong niche. I think it had a very strong brand value. I think people knew it stood for good care, great care, but also good food, good amenities, good activities, nice locations, etc. And I think we did that. The company after me is certainly, I'm still on the holding company board, which is called Grove, Jersey. And since then, today, it's a 200 million pound plus EBITDA company, 251 homes. It's done really, really well. I'm very proud to have been associated with it. Along the way, we've done various other things. Barchester, we bought Richmond Care Villages, and then we sold it to Bupa. We went into America and bought a company called Trilogy, which we then sold in, I think it was 2014 we sold it. Yeah, we've done lots of other things along the way.
Terrific. And tell me, Mike, let's go back to the very, very beginning. This launch of your first home, how you went about it, what you did, how you funded it, how did it all start?
It's a very good question. It sounds quite amusing in telling the story. The first one was Malton Hill Farm, which is in the Cotswolds. I came across it because I knew socially a lady called Sally Allen, who was an interior designer, and she was married to somebody called Mike Waddingham, who was an architect. And I set Mike Waddingham the task of finding me a location for this new type of care home. I then took 6 months off to go and watch the cricket in Australia. And 6 months later, I came back and Mike had found a really fantastic site in Malton Hill Farm, which was a listed farm which had been derelict for a number of years. We had the planning officer on our side, we had the listed buildings officer on our side, all of whom wanted to see it go to a good home. So they granted us quite a generous planning permission, and we took it on from there, with the home itself opening in Easter of 2014. It won the Care Home of the Year award, it won the Finders Award, it won all sorts of things, and it's still going very strong today. And we then built a small cluster of homes in and around Malton Hill. We built Badgeworth Court in Cheltenham. We bought Hunters near Cirencester. We grew it from there. From a small regional group, we became a larger multi-regional group, and in the end, we became a very large national group.
And the first, the Malton Hill, how was it funded in terms of?
It was funding I'd made in advertising.
I see. Right. Okay. How did it go, that first one? What did you learn? What went well? What went not so well? Was it all rosy, or were there hiccups along the way which you've kind of learned from just in those very beginning?
It was quite remote, and I would certainly, I'm not sure I would build one quite so in such a remote location.
Right.
Again, in fact, I always say I'd have done the one in Cirencester first, I'd have done the one in Cheltenham second, I'd have done Malton Hill third, but that's not how it worked out the other way. So, well, to answer your question, getting a good staff group was incredibly important, and building up good word of mouth locally, a good local reputation was very important.
Yeah.
And it worked. It took us over 2 years to fill it, and we filled it at a very good fee rate. Very, very, very nice people living there. I always speculate on the number of books that were written, not just read, but written in that care home, because there were a number I was aware of. Yeah, so it's a story in its own right, the founding of Malton Hill.
Yeah, and you were still, obviously, this is a new sector for you, but I imagine. So where did you gain the knowledge and expertise, and who or how did you get that knowledge?
I employed a consultant, if you like, Marjorie Day. I'm not sure if she's still going, but she was very good at the time. Right. And they helped us recruit the first manager and make several hirings. The interior designer and the original architect still worked with me for a number of years after that.
Okay.
So we built a good team.
And I'm curious, because obviously you mentioned that you were running an advertising agency which you sold to Saatchi, if I was correct. Have you used, or did you use in that initial period from the beginnings of Barchester, did you use any of your knowledge and skills and from having an advertising agency? I
was always fixated on the idea that Barchester was a brand. It wasn't a single care home. The single care home, well, the first one was Malton Hill Farm, but the company above it was called Barchester, and I came up with that name. Literally sat in the bath one day looking at a row of books in a bookcase that was just outside of the bathroom, and I saw Trollope Barchester Chronicles, and I thought, that's a tremendous name. It sort of says every want to try and communicate, and I've stuck with that ever since. I believe in building a brand, and I think certainly Barchester became a brand and still is a brand. And the subsequent companies I've been involved in, like Dormy is a brand at the moment, but it's getting bigger. Oomph is definitely a brand. I hope Jelly will become a brand. Yeah, so branding was very much the forefront. Building a good team and a good brand were the two things that we really aimed for.
And you know what, because I obviously run a PR straight marketing agency, I'm going to linger on this one a little bit more. So when you say the brand, how does that translate into the practices of creating and raising the profile of a care brand? How does it work work in practice?
Good question. I think it was an outstanding location. That's what I was looking for. It was a period building on top of a hill overlooking the River Severn with a tremendous view. And then from the location, we went into ensuring we had good chef, ensuring we had good cuisine, ensuring we had a bar. We must have been first care homes to build a bar, the Seven Counties Bar, because from it you could actually see 7 counties of England. And we built a very good team of people. So I think the brand became synonymous with location, quality, great team, and actually asking for a decent fee rate commensurate with that. And I think very quickly we built strong fee rates across our first homes and the subsequent ones. And to this day, Barchester commands a very good premium price in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's great. And so Morton Hill, and you started to acquire other homes. So tell me a little bit more about that and why you decided to do that. Did you, from the very beginning, Mike, did you have aspirations to create a provider of a certain size? What were you thinking big from the beginning?
I think we got too big, frankly. I think, well, for me personally, we got too big. I'm much happier running a smaller company where I kind of know it quite well. I think the inspiration was Morton Hill was a classic renovation of an old building, and we had to get the listed buildings officer on our side. And the next two were also renovations. Badgeworth Court in Cheltenham and Hunters outside of Cirencester were, I think, buildings, but they certainly needed, the planners to be very favourable outlook towards us. And I think we achieved that. I think we learnt pretty damn quickly that actually renovating old buildings is hard work, which is why I think beyond Cirencester, we then made an acquisition, and then we started down this road of making 20 odd acquisitions, culminating in 2004 when we bought Westminster Healthcare.
And Four Seasons, well, you retired, didn't you, in 2013? 2019 was when, if I'm correct, was when Four Seasons Healthcare came on board as well, wasn't it?
No, we're not part of Four Seasons.
No. I thought you took over 14 care homes from Four Seasons. That's what says in Wikipedia state on the page. Wikipedia.
Yes, Barchester took a portfolio from Four Seasons. Yes, in about 19. That would be correct.
Okay, great. So these renovations, subsequent acquisitions, how did you go about securing investment and funding for that growth of Barchester?
Well, it wasn't easy. The first bank had a bank on our side, and most banks, including, very famous ones like Rothschilds, turned us down. A less famous one called Bank of Ireland said yes to us. So we started banking with Bank of Ireland. They lent us a certain amount of money. And then I was fortunate that I had two friendly equity sources that we were able to tap quite successfully over the next few years.
Yeah, I see. That's great. And then so Barchester started to grow steadily and quite considerably, and keeping the brand credentials and values was obviously very, very important to you. And how did you go about doing that and implementing it and making sure that it continued in a way that you wanted it to continue?
Well, it was a tough, if I say so myself, it was a tough job in those days. I think, firstly, I built a very good team around me. One-man band by any means. We had a good head of care. We had good commercial directors, good regional directors. I think we had to be we wouldn't buy anything. We would only buy good quality companies. They were normally smaller regional companies that had been set up by a couple or by a family or whatever, who kind of wanted it to go to a good home. Always transacted on the basis that a handshake was enough. We never tried to chip a price. I don't think we ever let anyone down. And we kind of built a reputation for being a decent company to deal with. We certainly built a good workforce. I think we always paid ahead of the game. To this day, we still pay, slightly ahead of the game. And we do put on very good activities. We put on good hospitality. We have good chefs in nice buildings. Yeah.
What's when you either were on the acquisitions and the renovations, what were you looking for in particular when you were making those new additions to Barchester? Were there red flags that went off for certain potential acquisitions? Was there kind of always a kind of sweet spot for you when you were making those acquisitions?
No, I think we're always looking to be the best after, say, 6 months of investment, to be the best care home in the locality, not in the whole of Britain, but to be the best in Middlesex or the best in Lancashire. To just put the best foot forward and to stand and represent those brand values.
And what about recruiting your kind of main leadership team and your managers? I everyone told me how important it is for the home managers to be excellent. Tell me a little bit more about how you did that and how you recruited the best and to those people
Well,
who kept the value of Barchester Healthcare.
you have to lead from the front. I always tried to meet people. We certainly never hired anyone that I didn't meet. And I think that percolates downwards. I would say absolutely today is the same as yesterday and it will be the same tomorrow. You are so reliant on good managers. We must preserve good management and we must encourage good managers to come into the sector. And I think we did that over a number of years. We went from making no money in the first year to making 150 million in my final year in 2013. We did a few things right, and it was preserving that team and rolling it out.
Yeah, and so by the time, well, you were the CEO until 2013, and what made you decide to leave in 2013?
That's a very long question to answer. I think the company had outgrown me. It certainly had, actually. I found it difficult to meet everyone when you've got 200 care homes. I mean, it's just almost impossible, and various reasons. But yeah, I think size is a relative thing, and it had got just a bit too big for me.
Right, a tremendous achievement. And I'm just going to ask you this again. Back in the day when you set up that first Morton Hill and you did the renovations there, did you have a vision to grow Barchester to the extent that you did?
It just grew. It grew and grew. But as you would know, with your background, it was once a brand takes off, it has a momentum almost of its own with some, quite good management behind it. We just grew it. And I think it grew to be bigger than I wanted to be associated with because I probably couldn't put my stamp on it quite as much as I had previously.
And another question I have for you, Mike, is in terms of your leadership style and your philosophy and your approach, what maybe have you, perhaps it's changed over the years from 1992 to 2013 and even now. I'm curious to know about how your philosophy and approach and what you feel works well and what doesn't work so well. Maybe you can just give your reflections on that.
Well, whatever I'm involved with, I do believe that the brand is so important. That's why the brand is called Oomph is so important. That's why the brand that is called Jelly Drops is so important. That's why the brand that is called Purozo is so important. And again, I only want to be in business with people that I kind of like and admire and represent that sort of thing. And it's always got to have a quality edge to it. I just don't want to be associated with price cutting this or price cutting that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, all those I know very well, and they are a terrific brand as well as a great name.
Well, that's it, exactly.
Yeah.
I always thought Barchester was a great name, and I think Oomph is a great name, and I think Ben Allen, who founded the name, is certainly one of the people you should interview. I think he'd be very good.
I think anyone who works in the care sector knows Oomph and Ben and the great work that they're doing. So that's wonderful. Now I know that this is a nice segue into the second part that we wanted to be speaking about, which is some of these other brands you're working with, other companies you're involved with now. So fire away, Mike. Tell us what you're up to now.
Well, since leaving Barchester, I was involved. I think I was chairman of a company called Breezy, which was delivering computerizing old people, if you like, bringing laptops that would be programmed to help the older user. We did pretty well with that. We sold that to a company in the States called Vital Tech about 3 years ago. That was a good one. Is up and running with me as chair. Jelly Drops drop is this is a hydration suite for dementia sufferers, completely unique as far as I can see, and is doing well. Yeah, and it's things like that. Purozo was a cleaning company that really does have a product, does work in this post, I hope the word is post-COVID world. It certainly worked the COVID bug, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Care home group I'm probably most closely associated with is Dormy, which has got 4 care homes at the moment, a 5th one being built, and it's just a very nice size.
Yeah, and terrific names, terrific brands. And I see the thread, this branding thread, Mike, that runs through everything, which is perhaps a common thread. Now, we've covered a lot, but I just one question for you, particularly around those who are listening, who may be thinking of growing and expanding their care provider or business within the care sector. What advice would you have for them? Maybe if you're advising yourself back in 1992, what advice would you have for them? Any major...
Find a niche that is defendable. I find something that nobody else is doing, hopefully. And back then, nobody was really offering good value for money in terms of quality of care, quality of surroundings, all that sort of stuff. Plenty of people tried. I think plenty of people failed, actually. Again, with oomph, I think we've got a product that makes the life of a chief executive of the care home group. It does make it, considerably easier if you work with them. So that's what I find a niche, stick with it.
Yeah, fabulous, fabulous. Mike, thank you so much. Now, what I ask all my guests is, before we go, is there anything that you've not covered that you want to make sure that you cover?
No, I think you've done very well. You swept your way through the territory. Thank you.
Well, that's what I try to do. Mike, thank you.
I said something a long while ago in another interview. I said never a company that's run by accountant. And I've learned, I paid the price for saying that because lots of people, oh, you can't say that. Well, I can say it. Don't be run by accountants or banks. Yeah, there you go.
That's my one. Tell me a little bit more. Why is that?
Don't tell me you're an accountant. No, you're not.
I'm definitely not like an accountant.
I think accountants are too focused on the numbers, not enough focus on the product. And I think the same is true of banks. Banks want to know the good times, want to be part of the good times. They don't want to be part of the bad times.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The accountants and the banks, of course, have a role, but that's it as a role to play rather than necessary advice on certain aspects of, a vision of a brand or a company.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Well, make sure those listening who take heed.
Okay. I'm going to run out of battery very soon.
All right, Mike.
Flashing light.
Thank you so much.
You're going to about this and then come back to me, are you, or something?
What we're going to do now is we'll finish the podcast. So we finished the episode. Thank you so much, Mike.